We have so much to talk about today. The 5060 Ti actually launched, and what were the pricing and availability, and does AMD have a follow-up? 9070 GRE details, 9060 XT details, some other AMD releases. We also have Nvidia finally responding with a massive driver update to all of their black screen issues, etc., and hitting in with a massive demo of some of the neural rendering techniques that they had showed off in announcements. You can get your hands on it now. We got some Nintendo Switch 2 stuff, some PlayStation stuff, some Marathon stuff, an Oblivion remaster for PC, screenshots leaking, all of that. Let's go ahead and start with the 5060 Ti launch situation though. So the MSRP for the 8GB model was meant to be $379. However, looking at a major retailer like Newegg and sorting prices low to high, it seems like the lowest price listings were $420. Now, Nvidia was clear that the $379 MSRP was pre-tax, pre-tariff, all of that. So it is unclear to me at this point what, if any, tariffs may be applied. If none, then these are definitely above that MSRP. But regardless, here's really the point though. Regardless of how the price got to $420, all I can say is an 8GB graphics card at $420 and up seems pretty bad. Now, these are out of stock. I'm not sure if they ever came in stock, though. It does not seem like much 8GB supply was actually launched, if any, because I have been trying to buy one for review purposes. You know, I buy something I don't recommend so I can give you objective evidence why I don't recommend it. Makes sense? Anyway, I buy it so you don't have to. What has really shocked me, though, is how high up some of these models go while still being 8GB models. Because again, we can sort by memory size, apply to the 8GB, and you can see that there are 8GB models going up way higher than they have any business doing, including $540 plus $10 shipping. So wait, $550? I feel like I've heard that price before. That's the price of an RTX 5070, which, by the way, have been occasionally flashing in stock at $550, their MSRP pricing. But why buy an RTX 5070 when you can buy an 8GB 5060 Ti, which has worse performance and less VRAM at the same price? Asus seriously needs to get some of their model pricing under control, or I guess another way of looking at it is, I guess people are buying them at that price, so they're chasing profits. So anyway, maybe you guys need to stop buying those. I mean, not you, my viewers, hopefully buying those. But anyway, the point is, what about these 16GB models? MSRP is meant to be $430, and it does indeed look like $430 was at least listed for one particular model, with the PNY Dual Fan OC model, which happened to be the one that I was reviewing in my review. However, do note that that one first of all, doesn't seem to have shipping included, so there's that. And then also, you can then immediately go up from there. 480, 473 plus shipping, 480 plus shipping, etc. The point is, these models just go up and up and up, including, again, Asus at the top of the list with $600 plus $10 shipping for a 5060 Ti, hey, at least it's 16GB this time. But again, you could get a 5070 for less when they occasionally flash in stock. The point is, as expected, real-world pricing seems to be well above those MSRPs. And again, if you look at one model listed at the theoretical MSRP, and did it ever even come in stock? And if it did, how much supply was available there? It doesn't look great. Now, realistically though, there's not a lot of GPUs available in this general $400 price range right now, because supply from previous generations from both AMD and Nvidia has been drying up as they prepared for this launch. So one thing that could potentially help is if we get competition from AMD. Now, there's a lot of rumors right now about a 9060 XT as well as a 9070 GRE. Now, the 9070 GRE sounds potentially very interesting, but the GRE models can sometimes be China exclusive, although not always. We ended up getting the 7900 GRE eventually as a worldwide product. So why don't we start with this one, but again with the caveat that we don't know if this is planned to be a worldwide release. Now, this would make sense to me as something to be in between the 9070 and the 9060 XT, because it seems like spec-wise, there is a large gap between those products, and it would make sense to have something to fill it. Because if you have like a 5060 competitor and a 5070 competitor, do you have a 5060 Ti competitor? To me, it seems like this 9070 GRE might make sense there. And it's looking like the specs leak is now saying 3072 cores and 12 gigabytes of memory. And this is coming from videocards.com, claiming their own sources this time. They're saying that they have received a specs sheet for this card themselves. So presumably this would be like a contact within board partners, that kind of a thing, where videocards.com was able to source some information. Now, however, this does mean that the, you know what, let's go down to this. So this is their chart of the overall specs for AMD's 9000 series. Again, this is rumored specs, but videocards.com does have a pretty good track record when they are claiming to be their own source, right? They're not citing some other leak on Twitter or something. They are saying that they received this information themselves from their own sources. Anyway, so if you compare the 9070 GRE to the 9070, you can see it's cut down from 3,584 to 3,072 cores. And then the 9060 XT is rumored to be at 2,048. Notice that 2048 is exactly half of the full 9070 XT. So this is where I'm saying there seems like there needs to be something in between these products, so this 9070 GRE seems to make a lot of sense. Now, despite having the cores cut down somewhat noticeably here, you can see that, 3072 out of 4096, we're essentially at 3/4, so 75% of the 9070 XT in cores. You can see that the boost clocks are cut down a little bit as well compared to the 9070 XT, but are actually above the base 9070 for boost clocks. So interesting on that. Again, the memory is cut down to 12 gigabytes GDDR6 because it has a 192-bit bus, but notice that the memory speed is also cut down to 18 gigabits per second instead of 20 that we saw on the 9070 XT and 9070, meaning that the memory bandwidth with that 192-bit bus and 18 gigabit per second would get us 432 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. So that is, again, noticeably cut down from the 9070 and XT models, which both had 640. We don't have the max board power yet leaked at this time. But again, now you can put that in context of the 9060 XT specs leak, which is showing, again, half the cores of the 9070 XT, but with a higher boost clock at 3.23, which, again, puts it also above the 9070 leaked specs, 9070 GRE leaked specs here. Again, the 9060 XT being on 128-bit bus means that you would need to either give it 8 gigabytes of VRAM or go into clamshell mode at doubling those and getting to 16. I know a lot of people get confused at why do some cards have 12, why do some have 16, and the issue is the memory bus. You need a certain number of bits for every VRAM module, and then VRAM modules come in fixed capacities, usually 1 or 2 gigabytes per module if we're talking about GDDR6. With Nvidia's 50 series, they are using GDDR7, which has some 3 gigabyte modules available, but when questioned why cards like the 5060 Ti, for example, didn't use the 3 gigabyte modules to get to 12 instead of 8, on that lower end model, they claim that it's just kind of cost prohibitive and availability is bad. Some of their laptop chips seem to be using it, so they are a thing that they could use. I don't know the truth behind the availability and pricing of those 3 gigabyte modules. But with AMD series still being on GDDR6, it does seem to make sense that if you're on 128-bit, you've got to go either 8 or 16. Depending on pricing on this, whether I hate the 8 gigabyte model will matter. Because again, with the 5060 Ti, we're talking 8 gigabytes on in real world pricing, well above $400 price point for the 8 gigabyte model. That's pretty awful. If we go ahead and get an 8 gigabyte card that has really good performance, but is like super budget friendly at like $200-ish, that's a whole different story. So hopefully the 16 gigabyte model is more of the focus if the price point is anything like we would generally expect for this class of product. We'll have to see. Now the 9070 GRE, like I said, being on 192-bit bus, you would be at 6 or 12 gigabytes. So obviously 6 doesn't make sense, so that's why you get 12. Anyway, I think the 9070 GRE makes a ton of sense for the product stack. But again, if we don't know the pricing, that would have a lot to do with how exciting the product ends up being. And again, GRE models are often, but not always, China exclusive. I think it makes a lot of sense though. Now, it would be a cut-down version of the Navi 48 die, so that would, again, does it make sense to cut the die down that far? Do you have enough supply, bin that ended up needing to be there, or are you just destroying chips that could have been a card that sold for more? And the 9070s, 9070 XTs are selling out, so there's a lot of questions there. Whereas the 9060 XT is on the Navi 44, which is just like half of a Navi 48 essentially. That's why, again, you see half the cores there. Anyway, so that's kind of what's going on with AMD's potential responses. Now, the rumors were maybe June for the 9060 XT and Q2 kind of generally for the 9070 GRE, but we are now getting some information that the 9060 XT may at least be announced in May, but announcing in May doesn't mean launching in May. Now, this is reported by videocards.com, but is an example of them citing a source from another site. This is a comment on Chip Hell forums saying to expect May for that kind of announcement date. And then with the May announcement date being publicized by videocards.com, we had Huang Anfu, sorry if I mispronounced that, saying the announcement will be Computex, but then the launch would be 2 weeks after that, which would again put that into June most likely. Again, all of this is still leaked information, but this source, Hong Anfu, has indeed got accurate AMD leaks in the past. So this would be a source that I would put some level of credibility to, although, of course, obviously things aren't set in stone. Even if this is officially what's planned now, does that change before it actually happens? Because again, the 9070 series was expected in January and ended up coming months later. So you never know what for sure will happen, even if the leaked information is accurate behind the scenes as of the time of the leak, because plans can change. One more AMD leak here. We have AMD Ryzen Z2A is said to be based on the Steam Deck's Van Gogh APU. All my sources will be in the video description. This is another videocards.com sourced article, but they are, again, not claiming their own sources. This is, once again, Hong Anfu saying Z2A equals Van Gogh. Now, the general idea here is that the Z2 series is designed for handhelds. Now, it's kind of getting confusing, though. Videocards.com has a very helpful chart here trying to sort it all out between the Z1, the Z1 Extreme, the Z2G, the Z2, and the Z2A, and the Z2 Extreme, and the Ryzen AI Z2 Extreme. The AI version gets you the NPU, the XDNA2 NPU. So anyway, there's a lot going on with these handheld chips. I'm still waiting on a Steam Deck 2, but I just don't think that the progression is at a point where it makes sense yet. I don't think there's a big enough generational jump. Specifically, one thing I'd be interested in is if the GPUs could jump into an RDNA 4 architecture that might be able to support FSR4, or if there will get to be a version of FSR4 that can run on these handhelds, because at the low resolution on these displays, upscaling, again, because these are not super powerful devices, it'd be nice to do upscaling, but FSR upscaling at low resolutions tends to not look great, even on the small screen. Anyway, I like my Steam Deck a lot. It would be cool if we got something here. But if Z2A is just Van Gogh, is it literally just Van Gogh that's already been in the Steam Deck for years? Or is it like an advancement on the Van Gogh? I don't know. But anyway, let's move on to some Nvidia news, which one of the recent big news around Nvidia, and I've reported on this, as have a lot of other sites, Gamers Nexus did a big investigation into this and others. There have been a lot of criticisms of the latest drivers that released alongside the 50 series. Now, these drivers released alongside the 50 series, but issues have been reported on these drivers on like 34 and 40 series cards as well, but just using these drivers. All sorts of problems, but the latest driver update that released with the 5060 Ti has a massive list of bug fixes. Now, some of them are gaming related, but there's also a bunch of general bug fixes, and a lot of these are the ones that people have been complaining about, specifically with GPU crashes with black screen, random black screen issues, general system stability issues, all sorts of problems. There's a massive list here of fixed issues. So anyway, I haven't had a chance to thoroughly test out these drivers yet, but I just want to make you aware that these latest drivers are claiming to solve a lot of the problems people have been having with this latest set of drivers since the 50 series launched. Now, another piece of NVIDIA related news here is that the path tracing tech demo that NVIDIA had been showing off, and really, well, my source here, PC Games Hardware, is calling this just a path tracing tech demo. This goes way beyond this. This is a neural rendering tech demo. And the neural rendering demo was shown off a lot by NVIDIA, but wasn't really available for you to download and try out for yourself. Well, at this technical blog post, we are now starting to get access to this. I may end up doing a video where I try some of this stuff out. I haven't tried it out yet to see if it's video worthy, but there's a ton of stuff going on here. Now, again, the technical blogs here are really more targeted at game developers, but I think the interested people in my audience may find interest in playing around with this and seeing what NVIDIA sees as the future push of game tech and graphics. Now, this is the real NVIDIA-specific branch of neural rendering, but keep in mind that AMD and Sony PlayStation have been partnering on Project Amethyst to also work on getting convolutional neural networks up and rendering for neural rendering in gaming applications for future, PC stuff with AMD and, Sony stuff, presumably on like the PS6, where neural rendering could really take off. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. RTX neural shaders, RTX neural materials, RTX neural texture compression, RTX texture filtering, RTX mega geometry, RTX character rendering, as well as the DLSS 4, Reflex 2. All sorts of new technologies are available through RTX Kit, which kind of bundles all of this together. And again, they have this Zora demo out where you can kind of try it out. Like I said, all my sources will be in the video description. There's a bunch of interesting stuff here. I do think that neural rendering is going to be a future direction of graphics advancement. It's yet to see exactly where that all goes, but I think a lot of it will actually really be based on the console space, since I still think game developers really often target consoles as their main development platform. So if your whole game is going to be designed around something, you would want consoles to support that well. So, NVIDIA is pushing the boundaries on a lot of this initially. I'm curious also where Project Amethyst goes, because that might end up being more of what games end up getting designed around. That's just my general opinion. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, this is pretty cool. I may or may not do a video testing this out on its own. Now, in other console-related news, speaking of consoles, the Nintendo Switch 2 might not actually support variable refresh rate when in docked mode. Now, it will support variable refresh rate on its built-in 120 Hz display, which I think is fantastic. That's one of my biggest issues with my Steam Deck, is the lack of a variable refresh rate display, because that really helps smooth out dips. If you're locked to a frame rate target and you're usually hitting it, and the Steam Deck is amazing at allowing you to choose any frame rate target and getting the display to lock into that. But occasionally you can dip below your frame rate target, And or you could set a more aggressive frame rate target a little bit higher than is truly stable if those little dips underneath get smoothed out with VRR. So I think this is a great feature, but it's looking like the docked mode may not support it. The issue here is there has been a change in the language on the website as it states this. So the original language is taken all the detail with screen resolution up to 4K when you connect to the Nintendo Switch 2 system to a compatible TV using the dedicated dock. The system also supports HDR, VRR, and frame rates up to 120 FPS on compatible TVs. There has been an update where that last sentence now reads, the system also supports HDR and frame rates up to 120 FPS on compatible TVs. Notice that VRR is now left off of that list when talking about support on TVs. So this could be indicating that the VRR G-Sync stuff is only compatible in the handheld mode on the built-in display and might not work through the DisplayPort to HDMI conversion that's happening on the chips. Anyway, we shall see what happens when it actually launches, but that's something to keep in mind. Speaking of console news, the PlayStation 5 price has been increased in Europe, UK, and Australia due to challenging economic environment. I'm mainly bringing this up because I know I'm mostly a PC-focused channel here, but I mean, we've been seeing PC prices, like GPU prices, be way above what we'd want to see, and just in general, generational advancements in price to performance has been extremely lackluster. This is another place where we're seeing that, because this is just so different than any other console generation we have ever seen, at least to my memory of it. You know, I'm 36, so I've been around for a lot of console generations, and what I always remember is kind of in the middle of the console cycle, they can generally release a refreshed version of the console at a lower price than it originally started at. And usually the console companies behind the scenes start out selling at a loss and subsidizing it through software, and then maybe by the end of the cycle are at least breaking even or maybe even making a profit on the hardware, just because the production costs go down over time. That's just not happening the way it used to. At least that's what it seems like with all of the production stuff. And anyway, we don't need to get into all the reasons, but it's looking like we just aren't seeing those types of decreased production costs on gaming hardware like we used to, and that's showing up in the console space as well as the PC space. Kind of piggybacking on the PlayStation, but also connected to PC. So obviously PlayStation games on PC have always had an issue with the PlayStation Network account requirements. And it seems like PlayStation has been starting to walk that back a little bit. And so we do have an announcement that Marathon will not require a PlayStation Network account on PC or for the Xbox versions of the game. Bungie has confirmed that directly. So I think that's good news for a lot of people. And the last kind of game-related thing I want to mention is that it's looking like the Oblivion remake is real, and we have screenshots, despite the fact that we're not supposed to have screenshots. So first of all, side by sides, you can definitely see a marked improvement in the remake version. So it does look like it is a they're definitely changing a lot with the graphics. Obviously, we'll want to know more. But how are we confirming this is real? How do we know these aren't fake? Well, what's going on here is that the website of the, I think it's Virtuous, is the developer rumored to be working on the remake. Well, data mining on the website produced some files, and those files are screenshots of the remake. So that, I think that can go as far as confirming that this is happening, that you could possibly go beyond just it being officially announced. So the developer being rumored to be working on the remake has files showing screenshots of the remake on their website. So there you go. Anyway, I think it looks pretty cool. I'll be excited to test that out. The rumor is that it could potentially even be coming out this month. The screenshots certainly seem to be showing that it's pretty far along in development, so that's pretty cool. Hopefully you guys found today's news useful and or interesting. If you did, consider the like, subscribe stuff. Just thank you to subscribers, viewers, commenters, all of that. There's also the join button if you'd like to directly financially support what I'm doing here, and you get access to bonus like behind the scenes content. A lot of times when I'm working on my big like side-by-side comparison videos, I have the side-by-side footage done way before I actually make graphs and film commentary and make the final video. And I do make those side-by-sides available to members as just kind of early access to content that's not fully ready yet, that kind of thing. Anyway, if you're interested, you can hit that button. If not, it's perfectly okay. And I hope all of you have an excellent day.